Hi, I'm Pamela Davis, welcoming you back now to Ghosts and Other Dimensions, part of the Reincarnation Chronicle. This is part two. And what we talked about last time was various kinds, we began talking about the kind of attachment that creates an issue for a haunting ghost. In the first episode, it was a woman that I dealt with in one of my previous houses who couldn't let go. She was so worried that her house wasn't going to be cared for the way she wanted it done. And finally, we had to reassure her that it was in good hands and that she could move on, which she did. However, we did move to another place shortly after that, a house that had been built. The house was begun in about 1914, quite an old and historic house for the Los Angeles area. And as it turns out, this house had belonged to a silent film star by the name of Mae Marsh, whom I had never heard of, but the previous owners, or the people that we bought the house from, told us that the house had belonged to her. And with our previous experience, I asked them one day, now these were very kind of materialistically oriented people who were deeply into all kinds of athletics and sports and football and all kinds of things like that. So I just asked them if they had ever had any paranormal experiences in the house. They looked at me like I was absolutely crazy. They said, well, no, if this house were haunted, we sure would know it. Well, great, that's reassuring. But again, this was a house that we wanted to do a lot of work on. And it needed enlarging and different things that we wanted to do. So again, we had a kind of a big construction site going on. And there was, at one point, a lot of very valuable construction material that was sitting on the property. And we wanted to make sure that it wasn't stolen and taken away in the night, you know. So there was a young man that we both knew. He was a sort of medical student who needed some work and appreciated a different place to sleep. He wasn't happy where he was at the time. So he said, well, you can stay in our guest house and you can, you know, sort of be the night watchman, make sure that everything is okay and locked down and safe and all that. So he was in the house. I don't remember if it was the first night he was there or the second night he was there. But we got a phone call at about 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning. He was absolutely, practically hysterical, saying that he had had to leave the house, that something that he couldn't see had tried to push him down the stairs from the upstairs bedroom area, had tried to push him down the staircase. And he was there was no way he was going back there. He was just terrified. So we thought, oh no, not again, here we go. So we brought in the same friends who had cleared out the other situation. Brought her into the house one day with her partner. And again, we walked around the house trying to figure out, because it seems to be basically a primary place where the energy is anchored, even if they do move through the house. And this one was by the front door in the foyer. And now we had not told our friend who the original builder, that this was a screen star from the old, before the talkies, the silent movies. And so she didn't know, but she contacted her, and Mae Marsh began speaking through her, talking about how sad it was to grow old when you had been beautiful and everybody courted you because you were a great star and wanted to be around you because you were so beautiful and interesting. And then finally, as you got older, she said, I used to stand here in the spot in the hallway by the door and say goodbye to people, so often knowing that I would never see them again. They weren't interested in me anymore. Well, she was very sad, very depressed. And Kay, the medium, began to talk to her and say, well, you know, you really don't need to be here in this place. You need to go to the light. You need to go up into the other levels. And she said, I can't. Well, why? We asked. Well, because, she said, I can't leave without my maid. And we had no idea what that meant. Well, what about your maid? What is it about her? Well, she's stuck in the basement. She said she and I often didn't get along. And one day we had a falling out. We had quite an argument. And it had been raining a lot, and the basement was flooded. And she was very upset with me. And she opened up the basement door and tripped as she was going down the steps into the basement and fell and knocked her head and drowned in the water in the basement. So she's there, and it's my fault because I got her so upset, and I can't leave without her. Well, we realized that what we had to do was find the maid and get her carry, you know, pick her up and get her out of there too. So we did. We made contact with the trapped maid, who was still in a state of tremendous agitation, anger, and sadness, stuck in the basement at the foot of the stairs. And we had known about the problem when the basement needed a pump to get the water out when there was a lot of rain. So this was a very long-standing problem, and had claimed the life of the poor maid in the 1920s. So anyway, we got rid of them. Now this was, well, got rid of them sounds terrible. We got them, we lifted them up into the light, and the house took on an entirely different character. And when you get rid of a haunting spirit like that, the whole place changes, and you get an entirely different energy, and it's much lighter and brighter and cleaner. So it's really not fun to have a haunting spirit who's there because of an attachment. And in this case, this was an attachment because of guilt. And guilt is another one of the very strong motivating forces that will create the phenomenon of a ghost who is held and unable to move on because of overwhelming guilt. So again, we have to really pay attention to our feelings and those of the people around us that we love, and get into forgiveness. And very most importantly, perhaps with guilt, is self-forgiveness, because the guilt doesn't do any good. It just creates a terrible, heavy, miserable circumstance, which can create something as oppressive as being caught as a ghost instead of moving on. So that is another kind of attachment that we've talked about, and in part 3 we're going to talk about another case. So keep on, stick with me.